Hi everyone, welcome to this new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist, and this is the podcast / YouTube channel where I speak to film creators about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, I'm joined by a special team. They're the creative team behind the new dramedy, Chanshi, which premiered at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival in the Episodic Program. So Chanshi is a dramedy about an Orthodox Jewish young woman who goes to Israel, presumably to spend time with her best friend, Noki, who's getting married in a month. But unbeknownst to everyone else, Chanshi actually has another reason. She's there to explore her sexual freedom in the land of her people. And in doing this, she encountered many situations that left me baffled, confused, and entertained. But she's also surrounded by a great cast of female characters, and I had a blast watching this drama. And I actually really enjoyed the ways that show creator, writer, and actress Aleeza Chanowitz spoke about female sexuality, identity, and freedom in the midst of also exploring her Jewish identity with her friends and family. And in this episode, I spoke to Aleeza Chanowitz, as well as actress Marnina Schon, who plays Noki, Chanshi's best friend. We were also joined by directors Triest and Geva to speak about the show from their perspective. So we spoke during the Sundance Film Festival, and I appreciate them taking the time to halt their festival schedule to speak to me during the day. So I hope you enjoyed this new episode of Carolyn Talks, speaking about Chanshi. So this show follows Chanshi, who was created by Aleeza here, who is the writer as well as the creator, Aleeza Chanowitz. And her character, I think, is like, at the beginning, I just kept saying, "What are you doing?" I'm like, that was literally me almost right to the end of the show. I'm like, what? Like, girl, like, yeah. she makes so. I would say she makes so many decisions that are weird, but like she doesn't even really make any decisions. She just lets things carry her along. So, Aleeza, I want you to talk first about creating this character of Chanshi and like the coming up with the idea of making it a show rather than a drama or a film, to be more precise.
Well, I had the opportunity to make a show, so I said I'm gonna do that. So that's really how it started. I was like, okay, now what do I do? Someone offered me a show. Wait, what was the question about? Like the character?
Like she's such an unpredictable character. Like the entire time I kept saying, "What are you doing?" Like from the beginning of the drama, from the first episode right up until literally the end of episode 4, she boggled my mind because she doesn't really make decisions. She just kind of like follows things on a whim. So I thought as an interesting aspect of her character. So like, how did you develop this character while you were creating the concept for the show?
First of all, I thought about how a lot of times when people first meet me as me, sometimes I get really excited about meeting new people, and therefore they're like, I don't know who's this crazy American girl, especially in Israel. Like, who's this girl and what does she want from me? Why is she so excited? So that was definitely an aspect of like, you first meet her, and I took that and obviously I made it louder than reality because this is fiction. And the other, wow, I'm sorry, I just got off a plane.
Just got off of the plane, just had a baby. She's incredible. Aleeza, I will defend you a little because I feel like some people think that like this character really is Aleeza, and like she's very much like an alter ego, like separate from like inspired by like a grain of your personality and your younger self, but then multiplied by 100. Like you're not nearly as self-involved as Chanshi is.
Right. I think she's a little less aware than, or maybe I was a little less aware when I first moved to Israel, which was 11 years ago.
And I also think, you're in the background. I also think that part of the episodes you saw are the episodes that Chanshi just makes it to Israel, and she's manic and she's super excited. And as the episodes roll by,
keep
Yeah.
going. But like,
Yeah, I think that you see different aspects of her, and you see the character kind of fleshes out, and you see a deeper side of her that you can't see when she just gets here, and
Yeah.
so excited that she does mistakes because she's so new here and she's so I don't know, all over the place.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like slowly unveiling
Yeah,
the inner self of Hanchi.
And like why she acts in this exaggerated way that she does gets revealed, and
Yeah.
like and like also the character starts to maybe mature a little as the series goes on, and like and like I think some people when they first hear about Hanchi, they think like, oh, it's going to be this like broad sex comedy, but like the reality is that like it's actually deeper and darker, and there's more heart to it than what people might expect.
Yeah, I want to go off what you said just now about the maturity. I wanted to know, how old is she supposed to be? Because she's acting very much like a teenager, but all the women in her life are clearly like mid to late 20s, early 30s, and she's acting like a teenager who's finally been let out the gates, and she's like, aha, finally my sexual liberation. I'm like, you need to slow your roll.
She does need to slow her roll.
it is early 20s. I mean, that was what I planned. I mean, I look like I'm 20, right? But there's also, I think it's something that really happens. Okay, this is just my opinion, but as a new immigrant, I think if you go to a new place, obviously there's a lot of things that new immigrants have in common in terms of being in the, being an immigrant. I think there's something about being Jewish and moving to Israel that there's some kind of familiarity already with the place, because all the majority of the people are Jewish. They know the holidays. They may not be observant, but they know like there's some kind of familiarity with everybody there. So I think when you come in, you kind of like can let loose because you don't have your guard up as much because there was some kind of, it's like family, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's like also with me, it's like, maybe I'll be too much for you right now, but I think you'll like me eventually.
It's true,
Yeah.
but I think, we spoke about this before, but I'm an immigrant, and this is something that I talk about very often, and it's something that I can't avoid not talking about, because to me, being an immigrant is part of my identity, because moving from where you grew up and where you were born and from all your friends and family fundamentally changes who you are as a person. And I don't think a lot of people understand that till they themselves immigrate. Like, it's not like going on a vacation, it's
Right.
like, because, go on a vacation, you're going back home in like 2-3 weeks, you have your home to go back to. When you immigrate, when you move, there's something in your brain that you have to make this very decisive change and realize I live here now. For me, that was when I got my first tax receipt. I was like, oh wait,
Yes.
I was like, oh wait, my income tax is gone. That was when I worked my first job at Shoppers Drug Mart here. I came home and I cried. My sister's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I'm now a tax-paying citizen of Canada. that to me was like, it changed something in me, because I realized I live here now. And for Hanshi, she doesn't really get that. She and I think that's something that a disconnect that she has with the other women around her, because she's still acting like someone on a vacation. She's like, I'm here and I'm just gonna meet all of these guys, and I'm gonna she's not acting as someone who is, if you're making the change to live, you have to be cognizant of the people around you. She's not, especially with regards to the men, she's just going to all of these random men and making eyes at them and be making sexually overt movements. And I'm like, she's not concerned. In fact, if you move here, you might run into these men like 2-3 months down the road. You might run into them with their mothers, with their sisters, or you might run into them with your friends. And she's not, that's something that hasn't clicked in her head. Yes, I want each of you to talk about that aspect of Hanshi, especially with how it relates, as regards to how she relates to other people, because I think that's where I think a lot of my issues with her and her relationship with Noki comes, because she doesn't look at Noki as someone who has made a fundamental change. She thinks Noki's still the girl she went to high school with. She hasn't realized that Noki now lives and she's made a life and she's preparing to get married.
I don't know what to say.
Well, I feel like, so just yes to a lot of what you said. And I think like I feel like the show really reflects like the way that Americans can act so, what's the word I'm thinking? Yeah, like the way that they're just, they feel like, entitled when they're abroad, and like as an American, when I'm ever in another country, I'm always so embarrassed by other Americans and trying to get as far away from them as I can. And if I have to say where I'm from, I'm like, California. But even the Californians, there's, you know, awful Americans everywhere. But I think what you said is so spot on, and like that Chanshi is acting like she's on vacation, like there aren't going to be any repercussions for any of her actions. And I think like that's a big part of what horrifies Noki and makes her so uncomfortable, is because she sees that happening.
Well, I think also like Chanshi comes to Israel, it's like there's a release. There's like something like I'm by myself. There's no parents, which also like has to do with the immigrant story, but also has to do with like kind of growing up, where she's like, oh my gosh, I don't. This it is immature thought. Like I don't have to pay now for my actions. I can finally do whatever I want. And
also she's getting married. I mean, it's kind of like the she has like this final days that she can act out.
There's like a rumspringa.
Yeah.
I was making a comparison in my head. I was like, do I want to say I'm like, but yeah, it's like rumspringa, like what the Amish do. Like they hit 17, they go run wild and they have to return back home. But I had the thought too, but it was like, should I say it? But yeah.
Yeah, like it's an explosion of freedom, and she doesn't understand yet like what's coming.
But throughout the season, she is going through something. I mean, she's maturing.
but I think also it's like there's also the comedic aspect in the character who's like this, at least in the beginning, which is you know, if she may seem very unlikable at the beginning because she seems like she only cares about herself, then what's going to keep someone to keep watching? Do you know what I mean? So there's got to be, so it's like a lot of times I would think about things that I didn't want to write, and then that's what I would write, or things that I didn't want to say out loud, and those were the things that I would do, because I would say, oh, it's it could be funny. It's like other people have had this thought, and maybe selfish and self-centered, but it could be relatable.
And can I add something?
Yes.
I think a part of Chanshi that I really like, that I think it comes off maybe as selfish or self-involved. I think part of the friendship is the way she tries to set everyone free. She has like this ability to kind of take, sometimes violently, her friends and the people around her and
It
help
impacts
them.
yeah.
And kind of take them, show them, especially the religious ones, show them that there are so many options out there, that their desires are legit and they can do whatever they want. And I think that's kind of the key to understanding that character in terms of the relationships she has on the show.
Yeah, there's like a ferocious bravery to Chanshi that, like, I think starting especially like episode 4, we start to be like, oh, like she actually is helping some of these other characters open their eyes. Not that she's right about everything, she's wrong about most things, I think. But there is this like pure intention to like be, to do good and unearth the truth. She's a truth teller, but also sometimes she thinks she's a truth teller and she's wrong. And I think that's also part of our relationship, the Noki Chanshi relationship, is Noki is terrified of some of the truths that she knows Chanshi's going to see about her.
It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
That's the thing. I was just going to say that. The thing with as Erin is saying just now, she's very open and brash, and that's good. And sometimes you do need someone like that in your life. Like I have a twin sister, and our personalities are slightly opposite, where I'm more not necessarily I don't think before I leave, but I make decisions very quickly. Like I think 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead and say, okay, I'll do this. My sister is more hesitant, you know, and also she doesn't like confrontation. But I'm the kind of person like I will do confrontation. I'm like, let's get this out the way now, so we don't have to deal with it down the road. But she's like, oh, do we have?
So you're the Chanshi and she's the Noki.
Basically. Basically, yeah. And so like I relate to both characters in that sense. But the thing like with like you were saying with Kanchi is like is how she does it is like there's sometimes good in like pushing people beyond their boundaries, but then there's something bad in not paying attention to when it's the right time to do it. And she doesn't pay attention to the cues that people are giving her, you know, especially for Noki a lot. She doesn't like she doesn't read body language at all. She doesn't pick up on when people are uncomfortable. She doesn't pick up on when they're saying, you know what, calm it down. She doesn't pick up on when Noki's feeling self-conscious or uncomfortable. And even the character Nomi, I was like, she cracked me up because she's petty.
Yeah.
And I'm also very petty. Like she was like when she spelled out the name on the papers, N-O-M-I, she like, do you got it? I was like, that was one of my favorite scenes because I'm like, that is something I would do wholeheartedly.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yes.
But the
Danielle
reason
Jadelin does an amazing job with that role.
so good. But the reason I like that scene is that that character in particular is that she's a protector of Noki and she's not being smothering, but she realizes that
there is a choice in terms of I come from a religious background and it's a world that I love and I have a hard time with at the same time and I'm very critical of. So it was important for me that when I was going to put something on the screen and do some kind of representation, I didn't want something that was negative. I wanted something that's a little more complex. So I think also like Hanchi's character in there represents how I could find it suffocating, but at the same time, these are people who you may not agree with their way of life, but it's not that they haven't thought it through. It's not that these aren't people who
They're not necessarily brainwashed.
they're not like great. Like, and I think that a lot of people have anything that seems extreme. Do you know what I mean? And I think that like this Gitzy character on the outside, it seems extreme. It's like she's 18. What is she? She obviously didn't make this choice. And it's like, who are you to judge these other people's lives? You're not on the inside. You don't know what that's like. I don't think that answered your question, but it was
actually it did. No, it actually did because that's kind of she's showing Hanshi doesn't know everything. And that's another thing like we're talking about the American entitled. Like Americans go to other people's countries and they think they know how everything works there because they're learning from the perception that America is better politically, culturally, all of these ways. And even if you're in the same religious community, like in this case, Judaism, like the culture in America is different to the culture in Israel, or even in another country in the Caribbean. Like the culture of Barbadian Jews would be different to the culture of Jews in Canada or the culture thing, because like it's about their community and it's about how they work there politically, and also just in the environment is completely different. And so I think that character Gisa, she does a very good job. I think it's like, as I said, I only got to see 4 episodes, but like to me, she's a very strong character, and it shows like you don't have to be like even at 18, she's very self-assured. She knows who she is. Yeah. Whereas Hanshi is in her early 20s and she has nothing figured out.
No clue. Yeah.
I feel like that's something that this show does that is so important to me, the way that I see it, because it's showing like so many different nuances. It's really like character based. Like Aleeza does such a brilliant job in her writing of like showing like all these unique characters that are all like kind of in the same community, but kind of in micro different types of Jewish communities, even different types of Orthodox Jewish communities. Like there's such a variety, and there's also a lot that's like, it's just based on the characters themselves. Like it's not necessarily a comment that like all Jews from Aleeza's background are going to act like Hanshi. I mean, Aleeza doesn't act like Hanshi. So I think like it's also
not now.
Yeah. It's very character based, and it has to do like the decisions that the characters make and their faults and their dreams and their desires and their mistakes. All of that comes more from who these specific people are, rather than it being like painting a whole huge community with the same broad stroke. And there's so many like minuscule little details that like a lot of people won't pick up on that give a hint of like difference in Jewish observance and relationship to tradition. Like Noki's mom, for example, people might not notice this, but she wears pants and she's not wearing a wig. She's not covering her hair.
A lot of people asked about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and it's not everything is talked about. There's a lot that's just kind of like in the environment, and it's kind of like, you'll pick up on what you pick up on. It's okay if you don't understand everything. And I think like I just at our screening on Friday night, my partner's cousin's girlfriend, who grew up a Latter-day Saint, and saw the screening, she like really connected with the first 4 episodes, and you know, she's obviously not part of the Jewish community. And it was so exciting for me to see that like this is translating and people are connecting with these characters. And it doesn't matter if like you don't understand every single nuance of the world.
What goes through is like how specific everyone is, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Like the
I just
universality
want it
of
to be
specificity.
entertaining, honestly.
But then, like the thing is that I love about like storytelling through the film medium or through TV is like it gives you, especially for if you have a drama like this, it gives the opportunity to relay different experiences to different people. Like you're talking about your partner's friend's cousin, your partner's cousin's girlfriend being Latter-day Saints. But like I grew up in different denominations. Like I grew up Pentecostal. I've been to Baptist churches. My grandmother was Christian Science. I spent all of my teenage years and most of my adulthood in the Seventh-day Adventist church. I've kind of fallen away from that, but I grew up in that. And it has a lot of similarities with Judaism. Like we honor the Sabbath, you know, sundowns, Friday night to sundown, Saturday night. That's our Sabbath. That's our Shabbat. We have a lot of the same. We have a lot of the same dietary restrictions. No pork, and we prepare a lot of our meals and dishes the same way, you know. And so I related a lot to that. And even within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, there's some people that are more devout, or I would say more strict than others, because there are some women that would not wear pants to church, but there are other women that would wear pants to church. You know, some women would not wear an all top to church, but other women would they were like, that's inappropriate. So you go to church in long sleeve shirts, or your arms have to be covered. You go to church, like women don't go to church with anything showing from their neck down to their feet. They would wear long skirts, and like other women would wear like a dress like I'm wearing to church. So there's different ways of observing your religion, and it's all about your connection and your, not only to your faith, but also to your culture as well. And the show kind of explores that in different characters. You know, there's each person brings something different or a different perspective, not only to Judaism, but also to, I think, female friendships, because the show is very female centered. And I love that about it, because it's showing different female relationships and different female dynamics. And I want both you, Aaron and Mickey, to talk about directing these dynamics, because Aaron, you're a man and Mickey, you're a woman, and like you would bring different directing styles or different ideas of how to direct specific scenes. Were there any scenes that you guys were like, you know what, I think this should be done this way, and like Mickey, you would have been like, you know what, women really
That smile.
Well, we don't necessarily feel like
A man and a woman.
I mean, it's not like we identify as anything else, but we always feel a little different.
Yeah.
So I think that always puts us in like, it gives us a lot of perspective about like how people are. It's not only about men and women with us, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like to see every character. That's what we said before. Like every character has like this specific set of ideas and beliefs. And I think I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
I think
continue.
I think that
like a
two-headed dragon.
yeah, it's wondering. So every sentence Mickey starts, I need to.
Yeah, he knows what I'm
But I
saying.
think I don't know. But I think that the fact that I don't know if it's male, female. I think the fact that we are multiple. We are more than one person.
Yeah.
and we with Aleeza and with the actors, talented actors, we had a chance to just have debates, like talk it through and understand more, and each of us gave our perspectives. Like Aleeza just smiled because sometimes I didn't understand something and she needed to explain it to me, and I think that's healthy. I think if it wouldn't be like that, I don't think we could show the gray area that we show on the show in terms of religiousness and also in terms of sexuality.
Yeah.
I think that every character we just talked it through, and each of us gave our, you know,
I think it's a very important thing you said about like it's legitimate to ask a question and to not understand something.
Yeah.
And I think in like this, like the PC culture, sometimes it's considered like doing something wrong if you ask something, if you don't understand, if you're making a mistake. But we really believed in like speaking about stuff, and
I think there's something very Jewish to that too. Like it is a Jewish value to question. And I mean, when you're looking at, you know, the shows that focus on like ultra orthodox, you know, maybe there's like less questioning encouraged in those communities at times, but like definitely, I mean, like the Talmud is like a book of rabbis arguing about questions and like duking it out over like the tiniest little detail. And so like it's a tradition that invites questioning, invites multiple perspectives and opinions.
it invites being an annoying person.
And you know, also Miki and I are secular.
Yeah.
We don't understand religiousness at all. We're from Israel, and Aleeza.
I know,
No, but Aleeza and who comes from the US has more knowledge about Jewishness, I think, or religiousness, or how do you say it?
Orthodoxy, but it's just, it's interesting how it's very different based on the location. Like you're saying something, you were touching that before, like a Jew from Barbados is going to be very different than a Jew from New York, who's going to be very different than a Jew from Israel.
Yeah.
Well, and also even like within New York, like New York Jews, there's such range, and like, and I'm a California Jew. I was raised in Berkeley in the Bay Area. I went to like a progressive Jewish day school that was like, you know, very like, I don't know, it was like we learned Hebrew and we had Jewish studies, but it was, and we had like services once a week, but like, you know, we had like a Moroccan female rabbi as the head of the school. Shout out to Rabbi Tzipi, goodbye. And like, and I come from like a very progressive Jewish world in Berkeley and Los Angeles.
Yeah, and I think that's no, go ahead, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that I never had a Shabbat meal until Aleeza invited me to one. So
one. And I have a religious family.
Okay,
actually.
You don't need to apologize.
No,
it's
because you said like I know nothing about
religion. I don't know anything, and I'm just projecting on Miki.
People.
Miki knows stuff. I don't know anything. Go ahead.
Thank you.
It's all a spectrum, and it's all, we're all individual. Like each person is their individual. Each person has their own views and perspectives and brings something different to the experience. And this, I know I didn't want to speak specifically to Aleeza and Marnina in particular, because the relationship between Noki and Chanshi is very, to me, is very unexpected. Because like they have been separated for 4 years, and as I said, Chanshi comes and she still expects Noki to be the person that she was as a teenager. But as it's revealed in later episodes, like closer to it will be, I would say, midway through episode 4, you realize that Noki has been struggling with something that has been creating an emotional and a mental distress for her. And Chanshi has no idea. And one of the main reasons she has no idea is that she never once asked Noki how she's doing. I noticed that she never actually asked Noki, so what have you been up to these last 4 years? And as soon as Chanshi comes, it's been about her. Everything is about me. And the only time she really directly kind of like addresses Noki is when she's trying to bring back up stuff they did as teenagers. You know, like she's trying to relive their glory days or their days of
I look at it differently. I think it's I mean, she definitely doesn't ask her like how she's doing, but I think that there's also they haven't seen each other in 4 years, which means a lot of their conversations are over the phone. So there's who they were when they were together, and then Noki clearly went to Israel and has, you know, it's like on the phone. So how much is each person telling the other person, and what do they know about who they were before Noki moved here 4 years prior? You know, the relationship has changed because of the distance, but it's also that maybe it hasn't developed like it should have because of the distance. And therefore you could say, well, she never asked her. You could also say, well, Noki never told her, or is pretending to be someone else.
And she is.
Yeah, Yeah.
pretending.
I think it's kind of the same way with every friendship that is this strong from childhood. At least for me, you kind of treat them like family, like they're obvious.
Yeah,
So
that they're
you-
obvious.
Yeah,
They're
Taken
always
from
going to be
granted-
there.
granted.
yeah,
taken
take
for
them
granted.
and you kind of sometimes forget that you need to be more polite or more sensitive.
Sensitive, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially Kanchi, that I think she's kind of in a manic state when she arrives here. She doesn't look at anyone and everything. She's kind of I don't think she's running away, but she's very excited about this new place. She just wants to live
it
every
up.
second. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also see in episode 4 that like in some ways Hanshi is the only like true friend
Yeah.
that Noki has, because her other friends, you know, like there's a distance and a wall that Noki's put up as she's like constructed this new, more
Personality.
observant personality and identity for herself, as she's kind of like and also she's lying to herself in a lot of ways. It's not their fault, like it's also on Noki.
You're just gonna have to keep on watching.
Just keep
Yeah.
on watching. But I feel like there is so much love too between Noki and Hanshi that is just this like deep undercurrent that like even though they have a fraught and challenging relationship, I think like there is a lot of love there, and like we had so much fun together, like choreographing the bat mitzvah dance together that we do in the wedding dress shop in the first episode, and like
Drunk.
I have the video. I found it. Very
There's
drunk.
obviously love that Noki has, especially for Hanshi, because the things that Hanshi does, I would be like, it would have gotten on my nerves very quick, and I would have brought her up on it. I would have been like, you need to sit down and listen to what I have to say. But Noki doesn't do that, and I think it's because Noki, as I said, is very intuitive, and she realized that Hanshi's going through something. So like maybe taking her to task, as I would say, wouldn't be the right approach in that moment. So that is what I am looking forward to future episodes, because I do want to see Noki also put her foot down and tell Hanshi, you need to listen, you're being a bit what's the word I'm looking for? One of the words I was thinking is like she takes advantage of people in a way where she just steamrolls over people just to get her own way, and she doesn't really think about if people are really in the position to do what she wants them to do. She just assumes they'll go along with her schemes. Well, not schemes is the wrong word because she's not scheming, but go around with her whims and fancies.
Like earlier on when we were like working on the script, we thought like of Hanshi like a vampire.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's like everybody she meets, she's like making them like a vampire themselves, you know.
Especially when she's so jet lagged. At night she rises.
At night,
and
she-
dies
all
down.
the adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
You look
love
like a
that.
vampire.
That idea is amazing. I think I love it that she's actually a vampire.
I thought when you said we thought of her like a vampire, my mind went to because she's ageless.
Yeah.
She
No,
defies age.
because like
I'll
she
take
meets
it.
people and after they're set free, but also she's like ruining them partly.
Yeah.
In a bit, yeah.
Breaking them up.
Yeah. I think it's all about boundaries and it's
Boundaries.
kind of the heart of the show, because
Boundaries.
boundaries, the book,
Boundaries.
because all of our characters, and especially Hanshi, are dealing with trying to be, they're young, they have fantasies and desires, and
They're all in denial.
yeah, and at the same time, they're set up to marry, and they have their communities and rules and families, and it's all partly strict.
And they also have like so much love and connection to their families and
Wow.
communities, and like so it's like wrestling with like, who am I as a person? How do I relate to these traditions and these different identities, even secular identity? How like, when Hanshi like tries for like when Hanshi's testing the limits and like seeing what it would feel like to break more rules, like it's also like there's also like rules that secular people have in their minds, and everybody has their own rules that they're trying, and like their own identities that they're trying to be part of, their own communities they're trying to be part of and fit in with, not just if you're Orthodox. I forgot where I was going with this, but the love and like, you know, the challenge of like, I want to be my own person. I want to, you know, figure myself out, but I don't want to lose touch with who I've been and the people who've supported me along the way and my values. Yeah.
So one thing going off of that, and it's we've talked a bit about it with regards to like immigration. Like she makes the very an instantaneous decision to do. Oh yeah, I'm like, girl, what? Like you don't just decide to move to a whole entire country just like that with no luggage. I mean, like
one suitcase.
Who does that? But like
someone who's on the run, you know, someone
right?
Like running from himself and from his life.
She got just this carry-on suitcase. I'm like, I came to Canada with like 2 massive suitcases and like with shoes and everything. She didn't have that. But in doing this, like she meets this character David, and he takes her to the settlements. And like this is something that like the show is really. I think you handle in a very subtle way, talking about the politics of not only resettlement, but like how characters like Chanshi and people like Chanshi who come from America and don't have a full understanding of the politics and of the culture and the people's the people's relationship, not only to Israel as a place, but Israel as a concept, as a religious and concept and identity. And she goes to the settlement, and this is where I think she's really beginning to realize, wait, I've been kind of looking at this place as a fantasy and as an idea and as an abstract concept. And she's realizing this is not what I thought it was going to be. She's not there. She doesn't have the full realization yet, but I can start to see the shift where she's starting to realize this is not a joke. You know, like one of the things she does from the beginning, she wants to meet all these Israeli soldiers, and she's fascinated with guns. And like me, being a person who has actually seen the physical effects of gunshots and like know people who've lost people because of gun violence and stuff, I was kind of appalled at that part of that aspect of her character, because this isn't a joke, but she's looking at it as like something very light and even in an erotic sense, because all of these people, the thing she keeps asking is like, have you shot a gun? Have you shot any person? And she's not thinking about the actual ramifications of that. She's not thinking of what that means for the people around them, and she's not even thinking about what that means for her friends and families. Like she's like looking at it in a very disconnected way, but she starts to make this shift. So I want you to talk a bit of the politics of the show now. With regards, we talked a bit about the sexuality, but just the actual politics of the religion and politics of Israel that the show I think handles very subtly, because it is a question that can't be avoided. You know, the show, you can't make the show without discussing that. So talk about that aspect of the show and how you how you wove it into the show in like different discussions with the characters, and then in different scenes, like the scenes, like we heard the gunshots, and like that's when you realize you don't see the shot, but like she jumps and like and I think the scene was actually really powerful, because before she's shooting the gun and she's having a blast. But then afterwards, she's not like, guns don't mean it's not a fun thing for her anymore, and she's jumping. So talk about I kind of made this kind of long, sorry, but she like the show kind of touches on all of these things, but then like that one scene, I think really brings home the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, it was very important for us to show like the settlements and her approach to the people who are living there. What she expects is like she has this fantasy of sheep and like grass, and like everything is like Sound of Music, you know. And when she gets there, it's a dump, and it's like it's a lot of poverty for the Palestinian people. We tried to have like some shots of the drive there
without it being didactic.
No,
I'll speak as the American.
I'll just say that I don't like talking about politics. I don't know enough about it to have a stand. And like when it comes to voting, if I do vote, I don't tell people who I voted for.
Yeah, we don't know,
because I don't think that if I don't know it, I kind of avoid it, because it just stresses me out. But you can't avoid it completely, because that's the world that we live in. So I felt like if I'm going to touch on it, I'm going to touch it in a way that's more of like my perspective of the fact that it's something I also want to avoid and maybe don't necessarily talk about, but it's always there in the background.
I think the way that we approached it, is because Chanshi is so clueless we kind of have more freedom, and I think also more a more comic way, like a funny way to touch these
Very
heavy,
serious
serious and heavy,
subjects.
conflicted subjects, and I think that's the way to do it without really, I don't know, it's not saying anything or choosing the right or wrong way, but just show it through the eyes of someone who's really an outsider, who doesn't know the rules or anything on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So it was a way to showcase it.
Yeah, there's both Americans and Israelis who just completely avoid the thinking about the occupation and the settlements and like what that looks like, what that means, what it feels like. And I think that there is a lot of naivete around it for like what's taught in, what the narrative is that's taught in both the US and Israel, because it's because people are like, well, this is where we live and this is where our families have lived also for generations. So how do we it's really hard to think about and talk about it. So I think what's the way in that our show does, and that they so brilliantly wrote and directed, was to approach it just truly from this character's kind of wide-eyed perspective, where she doesn't understand it, and she starts to maybe scratch the surface of just the fact that it's real, and I think that that's really hard. That's the first step, is just to be no, this is a real place and it is a real thing, because it's so painful. And I also wanted to say something about the American fascination with guns and military, and I think that there's something amazing in this one line that Chanshi says, where she's the settler character Michael is wow, you're good with a gun, or something like that. And she's well, I am American. And I feel that is just it exactly, because it's that American entitlement, it's that American fantasy of guns and sexualization of guns, and we have a problem with that. We had a mass shooting in Los Angeles, near where I live, 2 days ago in Monterey Park. 10 people died, maybe, and the number might have gone up, and it's barely even making the news, because it's so we have our own, America has our own things around gun violence.
I was so surprised to see it. We saw it on the news, and it was crammed between the weather and this is where we are kind of a Chanshi, because we're outsiders here, and we just saw it on the news, and it was so short and part of the day.
Because we can't. It's so hard to confront that it's real. While you're trying to live your life. It's so. I think approaching it in this dramedy is that's one of the best ways that we can do it, because otherwise we just don't want to look at it.
And I think this little moment that you described kind of shows how Americans in Israel, how we are more alike than we think. We found this resemblance and this between these two characters who are so unalike. Chanshi's from Brooklyn, she's American, and Michael is in the middle of nowhere in Israel, living without electricity, and at the same time they share the same mentality.
Enthusiasm.
No, but the way that that whole discussion and that whole aspect of the story is done, it makes sense not only for the show, but it makes sense for the character of Chanshi, because this is how she would see it. This is how she would look at things. So it does make sense. And the character of with Michael is interesting to me, because he is exactly the kind of male character that her cousins were warning her about. They were saying all of these Israeli men are not the ideal you have in your head. They're saying they can be abusive, they can be domineering, they can be oppressive. They don't listen. She's and when he came out, I'm but this is exactly what they were talking about. But she's not realizing that. And she's so interesting how she's able to be drift through certain circumstances. She's kind of an abstract observer, even in her own life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that line.
Feel free.
I'm Israeli, I can steal stuff. But I think, sorry,
Shade.
I'm not. But I think that what I was trying to say. I think when we watched, I think just lately the 4 episodes, one after another. I think for the first time we were like, okay, each episode she kind of sees a new aspect of Israeli life. You see, like the the religious life, because every group is so different. We see the American Israeli immigrants who are Haredi, and you see Orthodox culture, and you see the settlers who are they're religious, but he also touches her. And he's
very wild.
Yeah, he's very wild, and he has no boundaries. And you see David, who's like very strict, and he's like
touch her.
Yeah, and he's religious, but he's also
also a Mizrahi Jew, like a Middle Eastern or Arab Jew.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other like
sector.
A whole other community, also with its own spectrum. And everyone's just a person.
And I think Chanshi comes here with some flat image fantasy, and then she sees so many tiny groups and how they're so unalike. Kind of like in America, I think. It's kind of like back home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they go to different countries and have this idea of, I think a lot of it has to do with how the media portrays like everyone else that isn't American, like they otherize everyone else. So the Americans go to travel to different places, and they expect everyone to fit in these very specific ideals or perceptions that they have, these very narrow boxes. And that's how she, even with other Jews, she still sees other Jews as fitting this very narrow window that she herself has. And like it shows that even when you're in a community, you don't know everything about that community. You don't understand the people. Just because you're Jewish and this person's Jewish doesn't mean that you know any and everything about this person. You just know that one aspect of them.
Interesting. It's a fun show also. It's funny.
It's fun.
It's a funny show. It sounds really heady.
Funny.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just said like many times she had me going like, girl, what are you doing? And like those aspects of her, that ridiculous aspect of Chanshi is very funny to me. And that's where a lot of the humor comes from. Like when she goes to the what she calls it, the Ministry of Faith. And like, I'm like that's bureaucracy, that's government bureaucracy. Wherever you go, you gotta sit down and you gotta wait for these 2 hours, and it's frustrating. But that's universal because like we've all been there. We've all had to go to some kind of government office and wait for our ticket to call, and then you get to the window and you realize you waited there for nothing.
The worst.
So nice to hear that it's universal, because we had no idea. Now that we are hearing other people from all around the world talking about it, we find out that it's touched so many people in different places, like the Noki story, the things she goes through that we won't spoil, and Chanshi's arrival here, and David's. I think it touches so many people that are not Israeli, that it's fascinating.
I also have been surprised because I feel like the 4 of us are all kind of like weirdos and oddballs in our own way, and in similar ways sometimes too. And I was like, oh no, like, are we just like making something that we love? And like, like I had a fear that like no one was gonna like it as much as we like it.
No,
but people like weirdos too.
I genuinely enjoyed this. I genuinely really did enjoy the show. And like I said, like no, like that character know me. I'm like, she's mean. She's so petty. She's so mean. Honestly, I love her petty. But I also like really love Noki in particular, because Noki's a character. I'm like, I want to give her a hug. I like this scene.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah,
I want to give her a hug, and it's not because of the revelation that we get like close episode from the very beginning. She just seems very overwhelmed, and like when she was trying on the wedding dress, I want to be like, girl, that dress is hideous. Take it off.
I don't know if you can see it in the shot, but our amazing makeup team gave me like a rash outbreak on my neck. I don't think it's visible, but I think you maybe feel that she's itching. I hope you feel the itchiness.
Was it like taffeta? It looks like it's made of taffeta or something, like a really simple.
Yeah. And it's like it's not a good fit. It's like really it's a corset in some areas.
I know.
Falling apart on the sleeve.
I was just like, let me take you dress shopping because this is not it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a giant sleeve, as Chanshi says.
Go sell it on Amazon. The giant sleeve.
It's like like the Kim Kardashian's gonna buy it. Like she bought the mourning veil from White Lotus, the black mourning veil from White Lotus.
She did?
She did for like $1 million or something insane.
She should buy our show.
She needs to be stopped. That's what happened. She needs to be stopped. But
Okay.
I think that's all the things that we had, like half an hour. I think we had overtime, but that's okay. I had a blast. Talking with all four of you has been so much fun. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You asked such interesting and great questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really open.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, we've never talked before this.
Yeah.
This first conversation. Who are you?
You've been walking around your own little bubbles the entire time. Sundance.
Yeah, shooting in Israel. Shooting a show.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, I guess.
I'm gonna ask Kirsty about getting the remaining episodes because I need to know what happens.
Yeah, we need to get it translated.
We translated it
ourselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a family business.
I know translating is not easy because you got to get the nuances from one language to another.
No, it's hard.
Getting the timing so you don't ruin a joke with the caption.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It's so hard. Well, really extra kudos to you and your entire team. I think everyone did an amazing job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Thank you. So everyone, that was another episode of Carolyn Talks. And this episode was my interview for the new dramedy Chanshi, which premiered at Sundance Film Festival. I was joined by the show's creator and writer Aleeza Chanowitz, directors Triest and Geva, and actress Marnina Schon. And they were amazing to have. And I enjoyed speaking to all four of them. They were I just love their answers. And I love when they give such in-depth and personal answers and observations on their characters and the show and the process as well. So I appreciate all four of them taking the time to speak with me, because especially as long as they did, because I know time can be very tight during film festivals. So I appreciate all of the time that they were able to dedicate to this interview. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Carolyn Talks. You can find the video version of this on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Carolyn_Hines. You can find links to other episodes and all of my interviews and my published writing, my film reviews, interviews, film analysis on my R3 page. That's authorY.com/Carolyn Hines. And you'll find links to my other podcast, Here's What Happened, which I co with my friend Lanisha Campbell. That's a monthly podcast where we talk about film, TV shows, manga, comics, books, and everything of different genres, as well as my Asian drama podcast, Beyond the Romance, which is on hiatus, but I will be taking it back up soon. And this is a really great beginning to 2023 for me. And I can't wait to see what other interviews I get to do for Sundance and other film festivals throughout the year. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at CarrieCNH12, that's CarrieCNH12, and find the rest of my Sundance coverage on both Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag SHWH Sundance23. And until the next episode of Carolyn Talks, everyone, stay safe. Bye.